Commander Jasper Hawthorne stood at the observation deck of the Earth Defense Station Sigma, his weathered face illuminated by the ethereal glow of the approaching Nyx Empire fleet. Their ships resembled crystalline predators, their hulls gleaming with an inner light that seemed to devour the very darkness of space. The first transmission had arrived 3 days ago, a simple message that had sent ripples of terror through the United Earth government. Submit or perish. The Nyx Empire had conquered 17 civilizations across 3 galactic arms, their very name synonymous with absolute dominion. Status report. Hawthorne's voice carried the weight of 20 years of military service, each word measured and precise. Lieutenant Rivers, a young officer with sharp features and quick eyes, responded without looking up from her console. Their flagship has entered lunar orbit, sir. Energy readings are, well, they're off the charts, nothing like we've ever seen before. Hawthorne nodded, his expression unchanged. The massive viewscreen showed the Nyx flagship, the Eternal Night, as it positioned itself against Earth's moon. The ship was easily the size of a small city, its surface rippling with waves of dark energy. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the command deck. Supreme Overlord Zaraxis, leader of the Nyx Empire, appeared before them. Her form was both beautiful and terrifying, crystalline skin that seemed to absorb light, eyes that glowed with the intensity of dying stars. Commander Hawthorne, her voice resonated with ancient power. I offer you the courtesy of surrender. Your species has shown remarkable potential. Submit to the Empire and your people will serve a greater purpose. The command deck fell silent. Every eye turned to Hawthorne, who stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the projection with an almost curious expression. That's an interesting offer, Supreme Overlord, he replied, his tone surprisingly conversational. But I have a question first, if you'll permit it. Zaraxis's expression flickered with something between amusement and annoyance. Speak. In all your conquests, has anyone ever told you about the time humans invented hot sauce just because regular food wasn't painful enough to eat? The silence that followed was absolute. Zaraxis's crystalline features contorted in confusion. You mock me. Not at all, Hawthorne continued, packing slowly around the hologram. It's just that I find it fascinating. Your empire conquers through fear, through overwhelming force. But humans, he chuckled. We're the species that looked at the most dangerous animals on our planet and decided to keep them as pets. We climb mountains because they're there, dive into ocean trenches because no one else has, and send ourselves into space in metal cans powered by controlled explosions. You dare, Zaraxis began, but Hawthorne pressed on. You ask if we will submit. Let me tell you what humanity does, Supreme Overlord. We don't submit, we adapt, we endure, and most importantly, he stopped, looking directly into those starfire eyes. We thrive on challenges. Your empire isn't a threat to us, it's just another mountain to climb. The hologram crackled as Zaraxis's power flared. You will learn fear, Commander Hawthorne. Your species will break like all the others. No, Hawthorne replied simply. We won't, because here's the thing about humans, we're not afraid of the dark, we're what lurks in it. The transmission cut off abruptly. Lieutenant Rivers looked up from her console, her face pale but determined. Sir, they're charging weapons. Hawthorne smiled, an expression that held no mirth but carried the weight of humanity's entire history of facing impossible odds. Good. Send the signal to the fleet. Operation Prometheus is a go. He turned to face his crew, each member representing humanity's unwavering spirit. Let's show the Nyx Empire why you should never corner a species that turned survival into an art form. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and with it, the Nyx Empire would learn a crucial lesson. Humanity didn't need to be feared, they needed to be understood. And understanding would come at a price that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The Eternal Night's command chamber pulsed with barely contained rage as Supreme Overlord Zaraxis watched the human fleet deploy. Instead of cowering, instead of breaking, they were spreading out. The movement patterns made no tactical sense. My lord, General Vex, her most trusted advisor, stepped forward. His crystalline form refracted the ambient light, casting prismatic shadows across the deck. The humans are employing unusual strategies. They appear to be sacrificing defensive positions for entertainment venues. Zaraxis's eyes narrowed. The holographic display showed Earth's orbital stations transforming. Museums remained open. Theaters continued their shows. Restaurants served meals. It was as if they were deliberately ignoring the most powerful armada in the galaxy hovering at their doorstep. "Send in the fear projectors," she commanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. The Nyx Empire's most effective psychological weapon, devices that broadcast pure, undiluted terror directly into the minds of their enemies. They had broken the will of entire civilizations. Hours passed, then days. The reports that came back defied explanation. "They're adapting to the fear frequencies," General Vex reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Some are even using them as background ambience for something they call haunted house attractions." On Earth and its colonies, humanity's response to psychological warfare was becoming clear. They had taken the Empire's attempt at terror and turned it into entertainment. Amateur photographers captured the ethereal glow of Nyx ships for art exhibitions. Children played humans versus Nyx in playground games, arguing over who got to be the aliens this time. Zaraxis watched in growing confusion as humans began broadcasting their own signals back. Thousands of horror movies, scary stories, and tales of humanity's own dark history. The message was clear. You cannot terrorize a species that has already explored every facet of fear imaginable. "Fascinating, isn't it?" Commander Hawthorne's voice came through an open channel, unprompted and casual. "You know, we have this old saying on Earth, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Pretty sure the guy who said that didn't expect anyone to take it as a challenge, but well, humans." "You cannot possibly be this cavalier about extinction," Zaraxis responded, her patience wearing thin. "Extinction?" Hawthorne chuckled. "Supreme Overlord, we're the species that invented backup plans for our backup plans. While you've been trying to scare us, we've been studying your ships, analyzing your weapons, and—" He paused for effect, "learning some very interesting things about crystalline resonance frequencies." As if on cue, a subtle vibration began to ripple through the eternal night, barely noticeable at first, but growing steadily stronger. The crystalline surfaces of the Nyx crew began to sing with an uncomfortable harmony. "Did you know," Hawthorne continued conversationally, "that humans created music specifically designed to make ourselves uncomfortable? We call it experimental acoustic warfare. Though honestly, that's just a fancy term for really bad jazz." The vibrations intensified. Across the Nyx fleet, crystal began to hum in dissonant frequencies. Not enough to shatter, but enough to create a constant, maddening disruption to their natural resonance. "You see, Supreme Overlord, while you were trying to make us afraid, we were doing what humans do best, turning a crisis into an opportunity. Your fear projectors, we've reversed engineered them. Your crystalline technology, we've found its harmonic weakness. And your assumption that we would break," Hawthorne's voice carried a smile, "well, that was your biggest mistake." Zaraxis stood from her command throne, her form radiating fury. "You believe these parlor tricks will save you." "No," Hawthorne replied. "These aren't meant to save us. They're meant to show you something important. Humans don't just face their fears, we study them, understand them, and ultimately we master them. This is just the beginning of what we can do when we're really motivated." The transmission ended, leaving Zaraxis to contemplate a disturbing realization. For the first time in the history of the Nyx Empire, they had encountered a species that didn't just resist fear, they transformed it into strength. And as the dissonant frequencies continued to play through her fleet, a new emotion began to stir in her crystalline heart: uncertainty. General Vex stood in the private chambers of the Eternal Night, watching Supreme Overlord Zaraxis review the latest intelligence reports. The data streams showed an unprecedented situation unfolding across Earth's territories. Instead of descending into chaos, human society was adapting, evolving, almost thriving under the pressure of imminent destruction. "My lord," Vex ventured carefully, "the humans have begun broadcasting what they call documentary footage to our fleet. I believe you should see this." The chamber's crystalline walls shimmered as images began to play. Scenes of human history flashed before them, their world wars, natural disasters, plagues, and catastrophes. But it wasn't the disasters themselves that caught Zaraxis's attention. It was what came after. Cities rebuilt from ashes, communities banding together, innovations born from necessity, triumph rising from tragedy. Each catastrophe showed not just survival but transformation. They're not showing us their strength, Zaraxis realized, her voice hushed. They're showing us their scars. In the command center of Earth Defense Station Sigma, Commander Hawthorne was reviewing his own reports. The Nix fleet remained in position, but their usual aggressive stance had shifted to something more observant, more cautious. "Sir," Lieutenant Rivers called out, "we're receiving an unusual request from the Eternal Night. Supreme Overlord Zaraxis is requesting a conversation." Hawthorne raised an eyebrow. "Just a conversation." "Yes, sir, no demands, no threats. She wants to understand something." The meeting was arranged in neutral space, a small station halfway between the opposing fleets. Hawthorne sat across from Zaraxis, the crystalline empress somehow looking both more and less intimidating up close. "Your species," she began, "you have records of destroying yourselves hundreds of times over, wars that should have ended you, disasters that should have broken you. Yet you treated our arrival like just another Tuesday," Hawthorne offered with a slight smile. "You turned our fear weapons into entertainment, our psychological warfare into art. Even now, your people are attempting to synthesize our crystalline technology for what they call mood lighting." "How?" Hawthorne leaned back, considering his words carefully. "You know what humans did when we discovered fire? We didn't just use it to survive. We used it to cook food that was already edible, simply to make it taste better. When we found caves to shelter in, we didn't just live in them. We painted on the walls, created art and stories." He gestured to the space between them. "That's what you're not understanding about humanity. We don't just endure, we transform. Every challenge we face becomes a tool. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity. Not because we're fearless, but because we've learned to channel our fears into creation." "But the cost," Zaraxis pressed, "the losses, the pain." "Are terrible," Hawthorne agreed. "But they're also what shaped us. Every scar is a lesson. Every failure is a foundation for something new. Your empire conquers through fear because you believe it's the strongest force in the universe. But humans? We learned long ago that fear is just one note in a much larger symphony." The station's lights flickered slightly, and Hawthorne noticed how the crystalline patterns in Zaraxis's form shifted in response. "You know," he added, "your crystalline technology is remarkable. Imagine what could be achieved if it was studied not just as a weapon, but as something more, something beautiful." "You would suggest cooperation, after we threatened your extinction." "Well," Hawthorne shrugged, "we're also the species that looked at wolves, predators that hunted us, and decided to domesticate them into companions. We're pretty good at turning enemies into allies when given the chance." For the first time, Zaraxis's expression showed something beyond confidence or contempt, curiosity. "Your species is either impossibly wise or dangerously insane." "Probably both," Hawthorne admitted. "That's another thing about humans, we contain multitudes. Now, would you like to see what happens when we channel all that creative energy into building something together instead of preparing for war?" The news of Commander Hawthorne's diplomatic meeting spread through both fleets like wildfire. On the Eternal Night, the crystalline crew whispered among themselves about the strange humans who faced annihilation with innovation instead of fear. On Earth stations, humans were already drafting proposals for collaborative research projects. But peace never comes easily to those accustomed to war. "This is heresy," General Vex's voice boomed through the Eternal Night's council chamber. "The Nix Empire does not collaborate, we conquer." Supreme Overlord Zaraxis stood at the chamber's center, surrounded by her most powerful commanders. "And what have our conquests brought us, General? 17 subjugated species who serve us out of fear, while these humans offer something we've never encountered, genuine innovation." "They are inferior," Vex snarled, his crystalline form pulsing with angry red light. I will not stand by while our empire bows to primitives who treat our greatest weapons as entertainment. In that moment, Vex revealed his betrayal. Multiple Nyx warships, loyal to his command, broke formation and opened fire not on Earth's fleet, but on the eternal night itself. If you will not maintain the purity of our empire, Vex declared, then you are no longer fit to lead it. The response from Earth's forces was immediate and unexpected. Instead of staying neutral in what appeared to be an internal Nyx conflict, the human fleet moved to protect the eternal night, positioning themselves between Zaraxxus's flagship and Vex's rebellious forces. "What are you doing?" Zaraxxus demanded over the emergency channel. "Oh, you know," Hawthorne's voice came back, casual as ever despite the chaos. "Just another human trait. We have this thing about standing up to bullies, even when they're not threatening us directly. Call it a character flaw." The battle that followed would be remembered in both human and Nyx history as the moment everything changed. Human ships, drastically smaller than their Nyx counterparts, demonstrated extraordinary maneuverability. They had studied the crystalline technology well, targeting specific resonance points that disrupted Vex's weapons without destroying the ships themselves. "Fascinating approach," Zaraxxus observed as she watched human vessels executing precise strikes. "You could destroy them, yet you choose to disable." "Well," Hawthorne replied, his ship weaving through crystalline energy beams, "we figured your empire might need those ships back once we sort this out. Besides, we're rather hoping to study that technology properly instead of blowing it up. Scientists get cranky when you explode their research subjects." As the battle raged, something unprecedented occurred. Human engineers working with loyal Nyx technicians discovered that their reversed fear projectors could be modified further. The devices now broadcast not terror, but understanding, the accumulated knowledge and experiences of humanity, shared directly into the crystalline consciousness of Vex's forces. They felt Earth's music, saw its art, experienced its stories. They understood, for the first time, why humans laughed in the face of fear, because they had learned to transform it into something more. 1 month after what became known as the Battle of Understanding, the eternal night hovered peacefully in Earth's orbit. Its crystalline surface, once designed purely for intimidation, now rippled with colors that matched Earth's aurora borealis, a demonstration of the first successful human-Nyx collaborative project. In a newly constructed chamber that merged human and Nyx architectural styles, Commander Hawthorne stood beside Supreme Overlord Zaraxxus, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. The chamber was filled with representatives from both species, working together on various projects that would have seemed impossible mere weeks ago. "Your scientists have adapted our crystalline technology to purify water sources," Zaraxxus observed, her voice carrying a note of amazement. "While our engineers are learning to incorporate human creativity into our ship designs." "Turns out fear isn't the only thing that can change the galaxy," Hawthorne replied. "Sometimes all it takes is a willingness to see beyond the obvious." General Vex and his conspirators had been detained, but not executed as Nyx tradition would have demanded. Instead, they were now part of a cultural exchange program, learning about humanity while sharing their own knowledge. Many had already become fascinated by human concepts like music, art, and most surprisingly, humor. "We've received requests from 12 of our subjugated worlds," Zaraxxus said quietly. "They wish to establish similar collaborative programs. It seems the Empire of Fear is transforming into something else entirely." "That's another thing about humans," Hawthorne smiled. "We tend to be contagious. Our ideas, our creativity, our way of looking at the universe, it spreads." A young Nyx scientist approached them, her crystalline form glowing with excitement. "Commander, Overlord, we've done it. We've successfully merged human emotional resonance with crystalline harmonic structures. We can now create ships that respond not just to commands, but to imagination." Hawthorne and Zaraxxus shared a look that would have been impossible just months ago, one of mutual understanding and appreciation. "You know," Hawthorne mused, "humans have this old saying, the best way to predict the future is to create it." "And what future do you see, Commander?" Zaraxxus asked. Hawthorne gestured to the chamber around them, where humans and Nyx worked side by side, where fear had been transformed into fascination, and where two vastly different species had found common ground in their desire to create rather than destroy. "I see a future where we don't need to be terrified of each other," he said, "because we're too busy being amazed by what we can accomplish together." As if to emphasize his point, the crystalline walls of the chamber began to sing, a harmony of human music and Nyx resonance, creating something entirely new in the universe. It was neither human nor Nyx, but a bridge between the two, a testament to what could be achieved when fear gave way to understanding. The story of humanity's first contact with the Nyx Empire would be told countless times across the galaxy, not as a tale of conquest or submission, but as a reminder that the most powerful force in the universe isn't fear, it's the ability to transform it into something beautiful. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other civilizations began to wonder. Perhaps there was something to learn from these strange humans who laughed in the face of fear and turned their enemies into friends, one impossible innovation at a time.